All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in once again for the Nona Sports Cast. Today is a pretty cool show, completely different from what we've been talking about. It's a completely different look. And I have to tell you, this is an easy conversation for me because I'm talking to my brother. I'm talking to a family member. I'm talking to somebody that kind of bugs in my ear every time we do something right, every time we do something wrong. He's always here to hear my complaints and hear my good things that happens at Nona, and he's been seeing this club since the beginning. I think I've been trying to get him into this podcast for a long time. And when you have to make a drive to Jacksonville every time he's in Orlando, I try to catch him. I was able to catch him today with you guys, Coach Mauricio Ruiz. And I'm not going to tell you his whole resume. I'll let him explain a little bit. But Mal, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you're making the time. So just give your shout out to the Nona families and everybody that's watching us here in Orlando. And let's have a cool conversation here in the next 3 hours or so.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, as you said, I feel like even though I live in Jacksonville, but I grew up in this area when Nona wasn't, Lake Nona didn't exist, right? I lived south of Boggy Creek in the Hunters Creek Middle School. I went to Cypress Creek, high school, and then my family started moving a little bit north into the other side of Boggy Creek, which is now the Lake Nona area. So, and that really happened when I moved to Jacksonville 10 years ago. And so I feel like I've seen Lake Nona as a region grow, and then when you guys started the club 7 years ago, I saw it from its beginning, and it's been really neat from watching from afar, but also very close because my whole family it's here, and having the kids play at the club and have you guys work there and just be so close to it. Lake Nona now is home away from home. It's hard to say it's my second home because my family's here, so it still feels like my first home.
Yeah, it's cool that how we've seen this whole evolvement of the city, of the community, and I remember when we lived in the Hunters Creek area and we went to UCF. It was like, oh my God, UCF is so far because we have to drive through the 417 and nothing all the way through there. Now it's only a 20-minute drive to Lake Nona, and it's nice to see this evolvement. But Mal, there's a lot of people that's watching this show today that knows who you are and how your resume and your career up to this point. But why don't you share with us, like it's your first time here, and saying how did you get where you are, and we're gonna talk about your plans and what the future looks like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate that. So ultimately, I consider myself lucky because I've never had a real job for 20 years since I left college. I've been working in soccer, and I've been a soccer coach, and now more specifically on a scouting and recruiting, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But ultimately, I've been since I've tried to play professionally. When we kind of came out of high school and college, it just really wasn't a pathway to have a life, a pathway to struggle and to go through, different than it is today. There's so many different professional pathways. So I got into coaching at a pretty young age, but. But arriving in, like many families are here in Orlando, I arrived here from Brazil when I was 12 years old with my parents and my sisters. Didn't really know English at the time, outside of like asking where the bathroom was. But whatever they answered, I still didn't know where the bathroom was. I could ask, but I couldn't hear it. And there's some really funny stories there. But went through middle school and high school in Orlando. Went to play UCF, where we played together at UCF. Tried to play a little professional afterwards, and you just saw that wasn't the soccer pathway that I wanted to take. And very quickly, I fell in love with coaching. I fell in love with mentoring. I fell in love with giving others what maybe I didn't have, right? Giving others that had ability, or maybe others that had an opportunity but were missing a little bit of information. I think that was our case. I think we could say that we had opportunities, maybe not a wealth of opportunities, but some good opportunities, but we didn't have information on how to maximize that opportunity. So when I started coaching really youth soccer about over 20 years ago, close to 20 years ago, felt like that I wanted to be that for somebody. I wanted to be a beacon of information. So I went on to kind of educate myself, and I went into college coaching. I felt like college for me had a huge impact on the trajectory of my life. So I wanted to be that for other players that were kind of going in and looking into college. And so I stayed in college coaching at UCF at first as an assistant coach. And then about 10 years ago, I got the opportunity to be the head coach at Jacksonville University. So I've been there for the last 10 years. And just more recently, a new pro team, Sporting Club Jacksonville in the USL Championship, is being formed in Jacksonville, and I had the opportunity to grow with that club from its beginning, which has been really neat to see a professional club grow out of like 2 tables in a coffee shop and into a small office, and now to staff, and into a stadium build. So I've been working that full time. And also kind of tapping into scouting for U.S. Soccer Federation for the youth national teams, and then opening up a college recruiting consultancy firm. Once again, kind of going back to the why I got into coaching, to help families with the information that they need in order to take the next step.
It seems like you're busy the next couple months.
There's a lot going on. My days tend to be disorganized oftentimes, but like I said, I never had a real job, and I still don't.
Yeah, it's interesting. So now let's talk about, let's break down what you're doing now, because I think most of it, and I think what's more related to what you're doing now and to what we have here at Nona is the college route, right? So you went through, as you played for UCF, and then you finished your years at Stetson University. Then you went on and coached at UCF, and then Jacksonville. So you've been in the D1 soccer most of and now you're helping kids through that process. I think the first thing is like, college coaches, what do you guys look for, right? Because we're here developing and we're doing all of these things in the youth soccer clubs. But what are you guys looking for when if you can say, hey Fabio, here's a checklist of 5 things that your players should have. What are they? Because I think there's a lot of kids that say, I want to play D1. Well, not necessarily that's the best path. And we talked about this about the boys. And so what would be the top 5 things that you recommend for kids to be looking at?
So I'll make it simpler. I'll make it into 3, because this is what qualifies a student athlete profile, to what level they're going to play, and each one of those 3 can be broken down into subcategories, but we'll kind of stick to the 3, and you tell me if you want to break them down. But academics, right? So you want to play college sports, and what we see a lot is that a lot of students and families didn't prioritize the academic part of it. Well, then you want to play soccer, you don't want to go to college. Then that's not a good profile, right? There's a lot of other honorable jobs you can do without a college education. I'm not proponing one or the other, because there's a lot of really successful people. But if you want to play college athletics, then the buy-in is that you have to go to school, and you have to start preparing yourself for school before college, because you don't just show up at college and go, oh, and now I'm going to be a good student. You have to the preparation years, which are high school years. So the academic profile is the number 1. So what are we looking for? We're looking for students that are capable of completing their academic requirements. And then once again, you break that down into Harvard to junior college, to your program that allows you to kind of have an entry point. And there's a range in between. There's literally thousands of opportunities in between Harvard and between a junior college. And some of them, not every junior college is at the bottom. Some of them will kind of go up to the top. The second one is your level of soccer. Once again, there's the divisions of Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, NAIA, junior college. There's a college Christian division. There's a California division. There's a bunch of options around the country, over 1,000 options in each division. Understanding where you fit within that level. If your priority is only to play at the top Division 1 ACC, let's say Duke, Clemson, North Carolina, everybody wants that. So that's super competitive. So that doesn't mean you can't play college soccer. So understanding where your level of soccer is realistically, and what your goals are in soccer. Do you want to go to a program that, has all the bells and whistles, it's fun to put on your social media and to share, but you sit the bench for 2 to 3 years? It's not the right fit for you, right? So when we talk about soccer, like, what is the right fit for soccer for you? Do you have 4 years to play? The percentage that are going to go play pro are even so much smaller, that percentage that even went to college. The percentage that went to play college athletics, it's so small compared to people that are playing in high school. You're going to break that down even by another 100,000, the ones that actually make it pro. So realistically, you have the opportunity to play another 4 years of college. What do you want out of those 4 years? To some people, it's okay. I want to earn my time at the best possible program. Okay, that's okay. Some people say, I just want to play. I want to have fun. I want to enjoy myself. I want to challenge myself. So finding the right athletic fit. So now we have the academic, we have the athletic fit. And the other part of it, which is a bit of a myth, is the family budget. Families have to prepare themselves financially to send their kids to college. And that's,
but I don't get a full
reality.
ride scholarship, no?
No, just because someone told you you're special, you don't get it, and that's the reality. And I think we joke about it, but that's what we see. So as a college coach for 15 years, that was one of the things that we saw the most, and it was heartbreaking. Maybe a player had good academics, and academics help financial, by the way. They had academics. They were a good player, but they had no idea of the financial responsibilities. Sometimes we're talking about maybe they were offered a package, but they couldn't survive, right? They didn't know how to. They couldn't go to a store. They couldn't buy items, and they couldn't travel home. And it was sad to see that parents, once again, didn't have the information. Which and I say this, trying to kind of continue to educate. But parents have to understand that there's a level of commitment to sending your kids to college, because you're going to get a package academically that's going to help your finance. You're going to get a package athletically that's going to help your finance. But there's still a sum that you need to kind of prepare for. And what I tell parents all the time, like, what is your budget? And I ask them the question, but sometimes it's the first time that they get asked this question. What is your budget to send your son to college, your daughter to college? And they look at me like I'm asking them to solve a Rubik's Cube. I don't know even where to start. Okay, so let me backtrack. What do you currently pay in soccer fees, in travel fees, in uniforms, in food? What do you currently pay for your son and daughter? Oh, I don't know. That's just the cost of living. Okay, but they're not going to live at home anymore. If they're going to go to college, in most cases, they're not going to live at home. You're not going to have to pay tournament fees anymore. You're not going to have to pay uniform fees anymore. In most cases, you don't have to pay for shoes. Some cases you might, but oftentimes you don't. You don't have to pay for food anymore, because all that's kind of more calculated, right? And they're like, oh, it's like, so if you were to do a range of cost per year, every time you go to a tournament, every time you have to send your kid in with a coach and go to a hotel, and what would that cost you? And I would say that most parents are paying at a minimum, when put all that together, not just club fees and uniforms, but all of that together, at a minimum of $5,000, but at a range of about $10,000 a year. That's what most parents are probably paying if they sit down, and if their team are competing outside of the state, they're going to different places, or you get that random tryout in South America, that random tryout in Europe. You're probably spending towards soccer training, individual coaching, weight room, food, travel, recovery, about a range of $10,000. So that's your starting point, because you actually get to eliminate a lot of that when you go to college, because you don't have to pay for a strength and conditioning coach anymore. You don't have to pay for a side coach or a technical coach. You don't have to pay for an academic advisor. You don't have to pay for travel. You don't have to pay for clothing. You don't have to pay for food. And when I start kind of that starting point for families, all of a sudden, every family that said, no, I want a full ride. I was like, we're not going to get a full ride, not because I don't want to, not because I'm trying to be mean, because they don't exist. It's very hard. They're like unicorns. And so your budget is your starting point. Because when we promote a player to a college, one of the first questions, the two easy ones are easy. What's their GPA and SAT? Okay, what level do they play? Okay, I can see that. Those two things you can see. The budget should be just as easy. And oftentimes to families, they're not. So we ask that question. We have that uncomfortable conversation early in the process, so they can prepare themselves to future conversations with coaches when offers are starting to come to the table, and they're like, yeah, but we can't pay for college. Well, you probably can. You just didn't organize yourself to do that. So let's get organized. So those are the three things, right? What is your academic profile? What are your athletic profile, and what is your financial budget commitment?
And let's break down through this, Maui, starting backwards, right? So you kept saying package and full ride, which is two completely different things that I had a hard time, but I didn't have my family, and I came here towards the end of my high school career, and I had to figure it out. But this is probably one of the most important pieces of information that we can share with the parents now. What is a package like? And I want you to explain like how the academics help on that package based on the school that you're going to. How does the community service helps? How everything that we can prepare the kids from the freshman to their senior year in high school to be able to go to UCF if they have the grades and the soccer. Let's say that they do have the soccer and the grades. What is a package? Like
That's a great
how's
question.
this package came? Because I remember when I was we were in high school and I saw everybody applying for all these crazy scholarships. Oh, that's a package. You get $500 for minority base. You have $1,000 for being in the Brazilian club or
Whatever,
so on
yeah.
and so forth. So please explain how can we build a package when the kids stepping into high school? How can we start building that package? And
Yeah.
what does it actually mean?
Well, the important information to have, to start a conversation is to understand that scholarships are not, they're not unlimited. Every program has a limited amount of scholarship to offer. So currently right now, and the rules changing slightly, but Division One have 9.9 scholarships to offer. And that's not every Division One. That's the ones that choose to give out scholarships. Division Twos have less. They have 7 scholarships to give. Division Threes, there's no athletic scholarship to give. NAIA have a little bit more. Junior college, depending how they're funded. So the important thing the starting point is, not every player on a college program is on a full scholarship because it's impossible, because the program only has a maximum, say Division One, of 9.9.
So Mal, let me stop you there so I can explain to people. When you build a team, probably in college you have 25 players.
Yeah.
You only have 9.9 scholarships to give out these 25 players. So that means if one player gets one of these 9.9 scholarships, it's because that player is top notch and is most likely it's not going to be given to a freshman.
No.
All right.
It's a player
so
that has
the player
earned
would
that
earn that to
overtime.
his senior year to overtime. So then you look at the 9.9 scholarships and you have to build a team out of that. So let's say, for example, you're talking budget so the parents can understand better. So let's say, to make matters easy, a school costs $10,000. Everything costs $10,000. 10,000 times 9.9 scholarship, you have $100,000 to give out.
Yeah.
Then you go into these players and you say, you have $200, you have $1,000, you have 20,000, you have this, you have that, and that's how you build a team.
That's like build a team.
So then parents need to understand that it's not like they can do 25 scholarships on the team. They have 9.9, add up to the amount it costs for the kids to go to school, plus dorms, plus books, plus everything, and that's X. X divided by 9.9 is what they have.
That's exactly
and
it.
that's how you guys coaches will go and build a team.
Yep.
I think it's important to break down like to the basics so people can understand. It's like you have a budget. Every coach has, let's say, $100,000, and that's how he needs to build a team.
I mean, that's exactly it. It's our, and the easiest way to think about it is a salary cap. Right, every here in the U.S., right, and even in the world, there's financial fair play. You're not allowed to spend just whatever you want to spend. There's a cap of what you can spend, and the NCAA dictates that cap, and then even your school dictates that cap. So I have a budget, like any other business, to run my business. Right, my business is soccer players, recruiting of soccer players, and coaching them. So then, kind of the way you explain it. So now there's where the package comes in. So let's say we watch the player, we really like the player, but now I'm looking for a depth at the right back position, or I'm looking for a starter at the left wing position. 2 different investment levels that I'm going to make, right? If I'm looking for a backup at the right back because I have a senior graduating and I need someone to kind of come in and learn, the level of investment for that freshman isn't as important or as high, let's put it there, because I already have someone that's occupying the high investment. But as another freshman, that may not, depending on how you evaluate, I have a need. As a program, I have a need for a left winger. So I'm going to go out into the market recruiting, which with a certain amount of money, scholarship money, for a left winger, because that's what I need. So in this cycle, I'm going to value a left winger more than I'm going to value a right back or a goalkeeper. Not that I don't like that right back or goalkeeper, but I already have someone in my program that I think is good enough. So then I'm going to offer that left winger a certain amount of money. And for this cycle, it's going to be overvalued because it's a need that I have, right? So I'm going to pay a little bit more because it's a need that I have. It's like when you're hungry, food has a different value for you when you're not hungry. It's what you need. It's what you need to survive in that moment. So you place the need on that. But because I need to still fill other smaller needs, I can't give that left winger everything. Otherwise, I'm not going to fit my other needs, need 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm going to give that left winger a certain amount of money. Then I'm going to see where the left winger, based on academics, financial aid, which is a government-assisted program, If the left winger had good grades, a 3.5 and above, they're going to get a Bright Future scholarship. So I'm going to consider that Bright Future scholarship as part of what I already gave them an athletic scholarship plus a Bright Future scholarship. If it's a private school specifically, now there's institutional academic scholarship that I can already have my little table, my calculation. I say, okay, they're 3.5, they got a 25 on ACT. They're going to get from the institution, by being accepted, another $10,000. So then I get my evaluation on the athletic value, my evaluation on my what is disposable to me on the academic value, and then I'm going to present that offer to the family. And it might only fill maybe 80%. That goes back to having a budget, right? So, hey, Fabio, I want to recruit you. We think you can come in and challenge for a starting left back, to starting left wing position. We think, here's what we'd like to offer you. And then you have to go back to your family and go, hey, I've got a good offer from them. They think I can play right away, but it's going to cost us $5,000 to $10,000 out of pocket. Most families that are not educated, they'll say, well, no, we need a full scholarship. But hang on, go back to the conversation that I had. But you're paying $10,000 already to play club soccer, and your dreams to play college soccer, and there's a college soccer opportunity for you to play, and that money would just transfer over. So that's your starting point, because the beauty of that, different from youth soccer, is that you can earn more. You can eventually be on no cost out of pocket.
If you start at 80%, it's a good
potential up, right? But so in that space, there's a lot of different examples. But the question was, how do you explain package? That's how I explain package. Mm-hmm. There's a soccer value, there's an academic value, and there's a financial aid value, different grants, different scholarships you can apply for. Then you start creating that package. I would suggest, with good indication, because I've experienced this, every program will have a maximum of what they could consider a full athletic scholarship. And that's really it's a no-brainer, right? It's that no-brainer, like a good student, a good performer, like good human being, like we're going to take a chance. And it's a chance on a high degree of confidence that it's going to pan out. It doesn't always pan out because it's only a gamble, but it's limited. The coaches, if you go around every coach in the country and you say, hey, give me your amount of kids that are on a full athletic scholarship. They don't pay a dime to go to school on a full athletic scholarship. They'll tell you it's 1 to 2 max. However, they'll also say, but I got about 10 kids that don't pay anything to go to school. People are going to say, well, how's that? They're not on a full ride. How's that? Because they're on a full package. Mm-hmm. They have different things that kind of were incorporated into that package. So we have students that we send out to colleges and they happen to not pay anything. They're probably going to go back and tell their friends that they're on a full ride. They're on a full package. Mm-hmm. It's a completely different story. For mom and dad, it's still great. Out of pocket is no expense, but you really need to focus on your academics. You need to be educating what you're doing in order to receive that full package. Otherwise, you're leaving money on the table.
That's a perfect explanation, and I know that this is something that you probably spend a lot of time talking, educating the parents, and that's why I wanted to make a point on this. And then let's go back to the second one, like the middle one, which is the athletic ability, right? The soccer specific. What is the difference for me to play on a D1 level or D2 or NAIA or whatever? Does soccer, I know you're going to say part of it, yes, but does soccer has anything to do with the level you play?
Yes, but more specifically, it's not so much on talent, it's more readiness. So D1 are players that are talented, but the coaches have an interpretation that they're ready to compete. And when we say ready to compete is technically, physically, mentally, and tactically. So how do you come, once again, the sub-layers underneath the three main topics we talked about. The soccer one, you break that down into those 4 categories. Where are you technically? That means ability to control the ball in tight spaces, ability to make quick decisions technically with the ball, receive, pass, good quality. Where are you tactically? That's your game understanding. How do you understand the game? Can you be flexible in positions? Can a coach look and say, hey, you know what, I really like you, but I think in our program, you'd be perfect. Like, I like you as a center mid, but in our program, you might be better fit as a right back. That's the question you have to answer. Are you okay with that, right? So that tactically you understand. Then there's the mental part of it. Where are you mentally in order to handle kind of situations in the game? Handle obstacles, handle hurdles, and handle positivity. Are you score 2, 3, 4, 5 goals as a forward? Do you stop working hard? Or do you know, I want that more. I want to win. Like that winning mentality, the competitive winning mentality. 'Cause sometimes we talked about competitive and what we call petulant, right? Like that kind of like, it's not the same thing. It's aggressiveness and violence are two different things. You can be aggressive and not be violent. So a lot of players think that mentality, that winning mentality, that toughness, oh, I'm going to be violent. This isn't American football. Football, they ask you to be violent. In soccer, they ask you to be aggressive. So it's a control. It's a controlled passion, control aggression, control violence, if you would. And then there's the other piece of it, is the physical. Where are you physically in order to compete against what ultimately Division I is, some of the better athletes? That's what kind of rises to the top oftentimes. The better technical players, the better tactical players, the better mental players, and the better physical players as well. So then you do a rating on all those four things, and you see their rate of readiness. Because not every player at Division I level is ready there. But where's their average rating? Are they okay? They're technically not there yet, but once again, my depth chart doesn't need them to perform in year one. But man, their game understanding is really high. Their mental toughness is really good, and physically they're going to develop. So they're at a 2.5. Okay, we're going to offer a half a scholarship. Do you accept that? So then you see players that aren't ready, but they have the right package, and they might take that opportunity. Right? Because once again, you're kind of talking about that rating and that readiness. And then they'll kind of put a rating on the financial kind of package as well. The other component that's starting to become more of a reality, and I think it's something that's going to stick, is the social-emotional. Right? So that's becoming the fifth element that coaches are starting to evaluate. And it's difficult to evaluate that because you can't put a number to it. Right? You can rate stats. Right, you can kind of clearly see game decisions. You can rate physical capacity. You can see where they are, like how they overcome obstacles on the field. But the social and emotional, it's something that we call that self-regulation. How does a player how does the player have the ability to regulate him or herself during moments in the game, during the environment, so the coach can ultimately trust who they are? And I think the youth that we're growing up now, especially post-COVID. I think you highlight a lot of it. It's a reality that there's social pressures that come in their space, specifically through social media. It's becoming a reality for them. It's changing some of the other priorities. They're seeing themselves in a different light than they actually are. Their self-identity is different than their virtual identity. And that's just the world that we live in. So that becomes that social emotional, and you start seeing the impact of that in generation, because kids are ultimately a little bit smarter now because of source of information. They're a little bit technically and physically more prepared. Even tactically, they watch more of the game. But their social interactions tend to be more limited, right? Because they don't know how to address authorities. They don't know how to communicate properly unless it's a really safe space. They ask a lot of whys. But why are we doing this, right? And if anyone tells them, like, used to be a time that you respect. Remember, you used to respect your teachers, you respected your priest, and you respected your coach. I mean,
just by the figure itself.
Just by the figure. And then listen, and that got violated, right? And I'm not saying that you should keep doing that without asking questions. I think that got violated. So there's a cycle that kind of things need to right themselves. But at the end of the day, like, you should enter the door with the level of respect. And what we're seeing today is the kids are entering the door with a level of like apathy. Like, I'm not going to listen to you because the world tells me that I don't need to. So that's the social emotional that we're talking about. How do we see that? So we see that in interactions. We see that with their teammates. We see that with their coaches. So what are we looking for on the sideline? The easy answer would have been talent, right? What do we label talent? Technique, physical capacity, a little bit of game understanding. We still look at those things. Those things are super important. But we're starting to look a lot on the mental and the social responsibility as well.
That's great. And then third and last, which is pretty self-explanatory, but as a college coach, I think you mentioned the education, right? So if you're a 2.0 GPA student, you never play for a school like UCF, right? Because you never keep up with.
Not right away, right?
Something that I learned from you way back. It's like, it's not like this player is not capable of playing for me. This player is going to have a really hard time in keeping up with a JU's academics needs. So working backwards, what is the academics? What the college coach look for? Let's break down the academics part.
Yeah, so once again, it's based on the environment that you're coaching in, right? So we talk about players all the time. There's an opportunity for you to play college anywhere, regardless of where you are. but you need to understand what the right fit is. So the fit academically, you need to understand where you are, and you've kind of labeled yourself because of your academic capacity in high school and how you chose to address that. But if you start at a 2.0 all the way up to the 4.0, and so we see players now with 4.7s, even 5.0s based on IBs and honors and other classes. But if you start at a 2.0, so I say this, like imagine this table here, right? Like that's junior college and that's the top division one. If you're 2.0, you only have this part of the table at your access.
Which is still
it's still a good option.
Hundreds of schools.
And the good thing is there are options for you to jump, right? That's the beauty of kind of America. Like you're not stuck to where you are. Like, like situations are temporary. They're not permanent. A lot of people see kind of their situations as like, oh, this is the end of the world, right? It goes back to the social emotional kind of part of it. Oh, if I don't make this team, if I don't get a scholarship, the world's going to end. I know that's how they see it in the moment. But if you're 2.0 or below a 2.5, you got the ability of this bottom of the table. Take that opportunity. Work really, really hard because the junior college is a 2-year program. You have to matriculate to somewhere after that. If you have a 3.0, you got about half of the table and below. If you're a 3.5, you got 3/4 of the table and below. If you're a 4.0, you got the whole table academically, right? And then once again, we started doing evaluation of the other parts of the sports too. But from an academic standpoint, what you want to do as a student is to have multiple options and not just have a quarter of the table. But if that's where you are, if you're listening to this and you're parent of a junior and a senior, and there's not enough time to catch up, that's okay. So what we do when we bring him to our environment, when we do our consultations, say, hey, our strategy is here. Well, but what about the Division II in Florida and that? Like, no, like their profile, they're looking at 1,000, hundreds of thousands more players than your profile. So we can have a better strategy and we can hit the target a lot better if we focus here. Because I know that the schools that you're asking about, they're going to be looking at profiles that academics, I say this all the time, it doesn't really measure your intelligence necessarily. It measures your responsibility. And what college coaches, how they're looking at grades, especially in Florida, the state system in Florida. If you go to a state high school, a public high school in Florida, it's not really difficult. Now, you can go and do magnet program, you can do IB, you can challenge yourself if that's the capacity that you have and that's the environment that you've been raised in. But if you are a regular student in high school and you go and you don't take honors class, you don't take IBs, you just take your regular classes, no problem, you should be above a 3.0 by showing up and doing your assignments. So what college coaches are seeing, how it relates to grades, is level of responsibility. It's not really level of intelligence. Now, if you're in the IBs and honors and you're kind of doing well and you're valedictorians, yes, there's a level of intelligence and capacity there. But if you're just a regular student, which I was and most of the people are, college coaches are going, well, if you can't do that in high school, you can't do that in college. And we're not in the program, we're not in the space of preparing you for college. We're in a space of giving you a college opportunity and then giving you the resources there. You've had your time to prepare. That's your counselors, that's your teachers, that's yourself, that's your family to prepare for college. I'm looking at final product that once it goes back to readiness. Who is ready based on evidence? Academics are not opinion. Based on evidence, and based on the evidence that I have on how difficult my school as a coach is, and the evidence that I have and how difficult your academic programming was. That evidence comes together, and I say, not a fit for my school, yes, a fit for my school. So when you're looking at what academic looks like, if you're a student in Florida at a public high school in Florida, I highly encourage you to be a 3.0 student because at least you have half of the table, which is a lot of options. And if you just focus a little bit, be a 3.5, you have a lot of options, and then your profile is significantly more attractive.
It's amazing how I think it's a good breakdown of the three aspects, and we spent part of it of this conversation talking about that. And you guys, I'm gonna put the link here on this video for Arrow which is Mauricio's business, with Coach Romero that's been here. He talked to us about it before. And then all of this information can be available to you. There are our partners here when it comes to college placement and stuff. And you guys can check out what they do and kind of maybe set up an appointment with Coach Mauricio or Coach Romero. But moving on to the other 30% of your life right now, right? So for the last 15 years or so, you spent a lot of time from youth and college soccer. And now you're working with scouting for the national team. What is the difference from the players that you're seeing now, Mauricio, from you're looking at much younger players, right? College, you're looking from 17 and above. And now you're looking from 13 to 17 for the national team. What are you seeing in the evolvement of the American soccer player now that you're seeing that the highest level? What's the biggest difference that from your college careers and club career to what you're seeing now?
That's a good question, because there is. It's one of those, like, when you see it, you're like, oh, there's a difference kind of thing. But so how do we break that down into an educational process where players and families can kind of provide that opportunity, right? You never get away, if not at the highest level, if you're not technically capable. So technique is something that should be worked on at all times. So what we see and what we label technically. So we have key qualities within the U.S. national kind of a youth program, and then we rate those qualities. And when you break down technical quality, it's really looking at technical quality under pressure, in small spaces. And then you break them down: first touch, pass, range of pass, ability to take players on 1v1, so the dribble, the heading, and then you break down on the defensive side, right? Like your defensive shape and how do you prepare your body. We're looking at all those things, and we're taking annotations in games, and we actually put a little check marks and rate, and then we do a full report afterwards. That's a starting point, right? Like if a player isn't technical, or it's not technically ready yet or hasn't evolved, because we do see evolvement in this age. Like we're looking at U13s through the U18s, and we do see a growth of understanding. But technical quality is a starting point, is not the only point. And I think that's oftentimes the other mistake that people make. But yeah, it's definitely a starting point. You have to be technically advanced. You have to be able to handle the ball under pressure. You have to be able to be, at least have your opposite foot be useful. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be dominant with your opposite foot. That's rare. But you have to be able to complete a 5 to 15-yard pass with your opposite foot. You have to be able to trap the ball with your opposite foot, because otherwise you become predictable as a player. So the starting point, and when we're looking at players, is the technique. The other part of it, we look at the game understanding. So where are they in their game understanding? What does it look like in their ability to solve problems on the field? There's variations of how we look at that, because a lot of it goes to style of play, system of play, position, opponent. So we're looking at that. So those are the kind of so when I'm looking at a game, I'm going, well, that player only plays long ball, but that's what's being asked. I can't mark a player out because that's what's being asked. So what I'm looking at is like, okay, well, if he does play long balls, what is the quality of his long balls? Is it a driven ball? Is it a ball that kind of curves out? Is there a backspin on the ball? Does it arrive with the proper weight and technique on it, right? So we can still look at things even though the style of play or the philosophy of the environment isn't there. But if we see the attributes that are there, okay, we might kind of keep monitoring. The other thing that's coming really to light is just intensity. And oftentimes we see in youth soccer all over the country, even at the highest levels possible, we just see a lack of intensity. We see a lack of competitive nature and competitive spirit that kids have. Once again, they kind of look at being aggressive or being physical as being competitive. We're looking for players that they love to win, but they hate to lose, right? That they don't want. It's not okay for them to lose. And there's a healthy way and there's an unhealthy way to do that based on pressures that kind of get put in. But we're looking at the competitive nature, and the one way that we can look at that is the intensity of the game. If it's a game that it's super calm and super passive, okay. That's the game. That's the condition of the game. Sometimes you can't do anything about it. But you as a player, can you, we call it, accelerate the game? Can you accelerate the intensity of the game? Because as you know, the farther up you go, and the question is, like, what is at the top? The top is intense. The top in life is intense, right? The top in business is intense. The top in parenting is intense. Like, and you try to get yourself ready so then you can handle all of that. And when they talk about experts doing their job, it's like, well, they make it seem so easy. It's not easy. they train themselves to figure out how to make it look easy because the intensity, which kind of how they grew up in that. So soccer is no different. You have to play, like, they say like how to shape a diamond, right? It's under pressure. So a player, in order for them to grow technically, physically, mentally, they have to be put against the test. So we see oftentimes games at different levels, college sometimes as well, that the game is passive and you go look at it and be like, wow, look at their technical quality. Yeah, but did they have it like, there's nobody within 5 to 10 yards of that player. Oh, but that's just a game. Okay, well, the player needs to recognize that, or what we call the IDP, the individual development plan of the player, needs to recognize that the player now needs to accelerate the game. They need to bring intensity to the game. When there's a ball that goes out of bounds, you can reorganize your team with intensity. There's a foul, you can get to the ball quickly rather than kind of just walk to the ball. Once again, because you've heard this before, you're not applying for the job that you have, you're applying for the job that you want, right? So you need to, if you want to grow within the game, you got to think, okay, what's the benchmark? What does the next level look like? What does the best player in my age group look like? Not just, you can't start with a small circle. Okay, locally, what does the best player in my age group look like? Regionally, what does the best player in my age group look like? Because that's tangible. You can touch it, you can see it. Nationally, what does it look like? World class, what does it look like? So you start thinking about those circles, play in your position, play that you've kind of modeled your game after, which all of us have done. What does that look like? And the one thing that's consistent, yes, they're technical, their game understanding, they're physical, but they're intense. You look at the world football today, the amount of ground covered in world football, that's why everyone's kind of wearing the fun GPS and the bras and things like that. The amount of ground covered in the world today and the high volume sprints in this game, significantly more than it was 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Let me challenge you a little bit, Mal, because you've been out of the youth sports. What I'm seeing in my world is that the need of the social media and the posting and the need of being on a super team, it's bigger than the need of that development in terms of my clients, right? Because I like to say that we have the end user, which are the kids, but our clients are the parents.
Sure, yeah.
The decision is made.
And they're the ones that pay.
The decision is made by the parents. So you build super teams, and you don't have competition your entire club career. Then what? Then you become dependable of that team, because and the club is becoming dependable of that team, because if 3 players leave, everybody goes and follows. And then if you stay, you play on a crappy team, right? Because everybody else left. And then you don't build that competition. What can I do for you? Like I was listening to it's an old video from Neymar, and Neymar's dad came to him one day and said, "You didn't run enough." "Oh, Dad, nobody was running." I was like, "Don't you ever say that to me. Because for you, at the level of the player you are, you have to run for everybody. You have to do more for everybody." So then you put on these top teams, right? On this, and then every single game, every weekend for 10 years, it's 5-0, 6-0, 3-2. Like the hardest game is a 3-1 game. And then you go to college, I'm entitled, right?
Yeah.
Or I go to this next level and I'm entitled. Like, what do you mean you're yelling at me because I'm not covering the ground? It worked. My other coach was better than you are. And so do you think that is playing a role on this lack of development? Because we have super teams here that we haven't lost games, and I don't know how good that is for the kids. And I've had teams that were super good, and then because of the leagues and stuff, they start breaking, which is fine. We're developing players to play at that level. But then whoever is left behind is like, I don't belong here anymore. Or so
yeah.
So
and my answer to that, I think everything needs to be looked at on age appropriate. And that question has a complete different answer with 10-year-olds than it does with 18-year-olds.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
Please elaborate, Mauricio.
Yeah, well, we call that in scouting ages and stages. So the things that we're looking for a 13, 14, 15-year-old, that we're okay with breakdowns. We're okay with technical breakdowns. Like we want to see the decision making, or we want to see the growth that we call learning ability. We want to see their ability to learn. We want to see their ability to adapt. So we're okay with breakdowns. As you kind of get older, you should have less and less breakdowns, right? So the 17, 18-year-old, now I'm looking at that technical breakdown completely different. So a 13-year-old that tries to hit a ball that is difficult and it's a high risk and it breaks lines and it doesn't come off, but attempted. I'm like, that's a positive in my book. A 17-year-old that tried the same ball, same situation, and I'm statting this moment because maybe that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a break in the line midfielder, and a 17-year-old continues to break the line, and his numbers are not in the favor. That's a different tick mark, right? But then you kind of go back to what environment is that 17-year-old breaking the lines with his passes? And what environment is that younger player breaking lines with his passes? So I'm a big proponent, or maybe I'm against traveling far distances to play youth soccer, but I'm also against bad environments, right? So first of all, like, what does your environment look like? Does your environment promote good behaviors, right? Does it promote mentorship to kids? Because we know the majority of them, even though parents don't want to hear that, and I won't want to hear that either, they no, like, my son's gonna make it, my daughter's gonna make it for sure. Like, I see how much work they put in, they're gonna make it. I get that, and that's an honest evaluation of your son and daughter. But the reality is, most won't. But that doesn't mean that I'm gonna stop trying. No, you just need to have a clear picture of what your efforts are. So traveling for 12, 13-year-old, and it happens all over the country, and it happens from Jacksonville to Orlando. We got families, 12-year-old kids driving from Jacksonville 2.5 hours to come play for a club in Orlando, because they think that's the best thing for them, when their club locally can provide at that age, once again, stages and ages, can provide a good environment for them. And I know that because I've seen him. Like, I believe you should stay
And
here.
they're crossing on I-4
They're
with the
crossing on
kids
I-4
that are living in Orlando to play
to
Jacksonville.
go play Jacksonville, right? As you kind of get older and the game starts telling a story, the reality is the game starts telling a story, because especially when you kind of get to the high school sophomore year, the levels are, the interest levels, the commitment levels, different distractions coming to your life, and then the game in life starts telling you, like, do I really need to continue to make this commitment at 15, 16, or no? Hey, my son once said he's been recognized by a lot of people. There's a lot of feedback. It's the time. So I do think that there's a time and place to join that really competitive high environment. And to each kid, slightly different. There's a smaller range, right? But it's still all within a range. And at the younger age groups, it's about developing technically, developing your game understanding, developing that competitive nature. And if
The love for the game.
The love for the game, the passion, right? And not losing that because we're putting additional external pressures on our kids. So the question is always is, right? Does my environment promote some of the foundational things based on the age that my son and daughter are playing in? And if the answer is yes, even if your team doesn't have that, those acronyms that you would want to have, but you're 10, you're 11, you're 12, and that's okay. Keep working on these things, and let's see at the right time and place if there's an opportunity, right? Maybe your club gets into a situation, or you have an opportunity to move, and everyone's happy with that. It's not a problem. But what we see a lot is not assessing your environment, making a decision that you think, as, and no disrespect to anybody, as an engineer that's never played soccer, or as a soccer player that's never gone through youth soccer. Like, there's just kind of different components of, like, I know how to count, but I'm not an accountant, right? I know how to open and close my sink, but I'm not a plumber. And so I'm going to depend on the people, like, just so because I know how to play soccer, that doesn't make you a soccer professional. Just because you watch the game doesn't make you a professional or an expert in the development. Right? So does your environment promote proper development? Is it a safe space for the kids at a certain age? That's really important. Do your coaches promote good behavior? Are they good role models to your kids? Those are super important. And if you got to go, coach promotes a good environment. He's not yelling or cursing or belittling my kid. In the middle of an adversity, they kind of sit down, they kind of communicate. Does the club promote that? If those boxes are positive, okay, my son and daughter are in the right environment. Hey, can I get feedback? What do you think the next step is? What do you think my team is looking like? Then you start kind of having those conversations from a safe place, from a place of trust and kind of combination. And then people obviously have the right to make their own choice. But are they making their choice with a full deck of cards, with the full information, or are they making a choice, kind of goes back to the social emotional, based on an emotion? And oftentimes, we should not be making choices based on emotion, on how your team just did that weekend. And that's often
It's
what happens.
it's the story of a club director's Monday, right?
Yeah.
Every Monday, it's
Well, and
the
we
email
see it.
box and the phone calls, and
And
it's
it's not
just
unique to your
no,
environment,
I know,
right? And
no,
it's like even at the top level. I
everybody.
mean, my scouting responsibilities are the top MLS academies in the country, the Philadelphias and the Charlottes and the Seattles and FC Dallas and Orlando Cities, Inter Miami. Like I'm in those backgrounds, and I'm seeing this behavior. You think that a pro academy is the right place for your son and daughter? Be careful what you ask
Yeah,
for.
I don't know. Yeah,
Be careful what you ask for, because I actually witness all over the country some horrendous behavior by people that you want to put your kids in. And hey, your son is 14 years old, 15 years old. Are you okay with that behavior from the coach? If you're okay with that, then go be with God. That's your decision. I'm okay with that. But if you're asking my opinion on what I would want for my son at a 14, 15, 16-year-old and how they want to be mentored, be careful what you ask for. The grass is not always greener, and the competition level is harder, the expectation is harder, the pressure is harder, and it's more cutthroat. There's this, hey, you're committed to us for a year. I see players coming in and out of clubs all the time because they can't cut it, but the club is actually not providing good support for them. So it's not a real, I mean, it's not a spot on answer, right? Because there's no such thing, because it's a dynamic environment, and to each person. But I always go back to, like, what does the environment look like, right? Do you have an opportunity to go communicate, from a good place, to be curious, not to be defiant. Like, you don't want to defy people. Like, you want to be curious. You want to ask questions. And if you can kind of do that in the process, at the end, now you have a full deck of cards. Now you can make the best choice that is for your son and daughter, but from a complete picture, not from an isolated moment or a couple isolated moments that don't tell the full story.
that's great. Every time we touch and we started talking about this, we can go on and on and on. And I want to be respectful of your time. So we'll transition, and I'm sure we have a part two of this podcast where we can talk more about youth development and whenever we have Nona Cup in the next couple of weeks. I think you'll be around here, and then we can set up some other talks and even bring you to speak to some of our
Sure.
to some of our parents.
Can I give you one really interesting stat of what predicts future potential? And most people would think that it's talent, but it's not. It's mentality. So what they've done is, and I'm saying this from a study and courses that I've taken, what they've done is they've looked at kids and they followed for 13, 14-year-olds that got labeled talented. And they looked at their trajectory for the next 10 years. And they did the same thing. They looked at current players that were high potential players, and they looked at negatively their trajectory for the last 10 years. And they looked at what are the commonalities. And the commonality of the ones that they started tracking up that actually made it, and the ones that have made it and started tracking the trajectory back, it's ability to endure obstacles.
And I think that's life.
It's not talent. Now there's a base level.
It's not just in soccer, right?
Right.
I mean,
like there's a base level of expectation, right? So when people are kind of talking about, my son and daughter are not talented today, well, what is talent? We label talent as a projection of future potential. Talent is not performance. Performance is one thing. It's great. It's needed to measure. But talent is a projection of future potential. So where are you in your potential matrix and your performance kind of trajectory? And if you can endure and you can power through, there's a higher chance. And the numbers that support that. So we look at. So I'm kind of giving you a little behind the curtain on what we're looking at U.S. soccer scouts. We break up the teams and players by what we call a relative age effect. That we're looking at quarter months, and even down to sometimes the date of the month. So quarter one, right, January through March, quarter two, then quarter three, August through October, and then quarter four, October through December. We can only scout the product that's on the field. So when we go scout, because we don't have our own team, or we're looking for potential players, oftentimes, what would you think are the players that are on the field? What quarter are the players that are on the field?
First quarter.
What quarter one, quarter two? At all levels. And I would challenge, as a fun exercise, not to kind of catch people or anything, go look at the birth months of most of the teams that will consider themselves the elite teams, the number one team at each club. The breakdown of quarters for that team, I will tell you, and I'll put good money behind it, 60 to 70% of the players on every roster are what considered the elite team are quarter one, quarter two kids. And then they'll have what we call late developers, right? Like the quarter 3, quarter 4, that clearly, they're shouting potential. You can clearly see it, but they just not quite there. Then everybody can. You don't need a trained eye to see a smaller kid that can dribble through everybody. That's typically what they'll take as a quarter 3, quarter 4. It's a shouting talent kid. But there are a lot of other things that you can be looking at for quarter 3, quarter 4s, because the data will show that a quarter 3, quarter 4, because they never got the opportunity against other kids that have physically grown at a teenage year, a January kid and a December kid, there's so much growth that's going to happen in a year period. Yeah. So that December kid oftentimes doesn't get the same opportunity that a January kid got, but over time, when it evens out around 18 to 20, the kids that are on national teams, so do the same exercise. Most national teams, not just US, all over the country, look at World Cup, and FIFA has this data. The World Cup data that shows World Cup teams playing, and they break down in quarters, most of World Cup teams are quarter 3, quarter 4s.
Wow.
It's an impressive data, and it's something that, once again, it's a blind side that all of us have, but most clubs, elite teams that they consider elite because it's based on performance, how do you get more players?
By the way, results today.
The results today. But that does not predict future potential for that individual.
That's super interesting. So transitioning to our new role, Mauricio, and to your new role, not new anymore. You've been there 6 months or so in Jacksonville.
It's almost 2 years.
From when the project first started, yeah. So we talked. We have a podcast that we launched last week that we talked to young leaders working in the soccer environment off the field, not as a player, as a coach anymore. And this is one of the things that it's a true picture for what you've done. Not only you educated yourself and you developed yourself on the field and in doing the things on the field, but now you took a role that is completely different of building a new franchise for USL in Jacksonville with a pro team. And I think we can close this with you giving the last third of your current life now. I know everybody likes to talk about the game and the field and stuff, but I like this part because this is what I like to do. It's my passion in the game, in developing, opening, and it's broadcasting, it's marketing, it's the off the field stuff. So talking to those kids that, like you and I, that we played soccer, we went through college, we did everything, and now we see ourselves in our 40s looking into this business side of the game. How do you feel about that? I know it's completely different from what you're talking about. Maybe you need to take a breath but I want to know how was that transition for you, and what can you tell us about your new gig?
Yeah, no, it definitely was interesting, kind of leaving the grass and getting in the boardroom. Right, someone said this to me, and I think we were on a trip with Paul. He said, there's the locker room and there's a boardroom, and you need both, and you need people in both. And so how do you transition? And very few people have the ability to transition from the locker room to the boardroom. So very few people want to, or vice versa. Everyone that's in the boardroom wants to be in the locker room. Kind of that's the reality, right? But many few have.
That's where the cool things happen.
That's where that's when you feel like you're a bigger part of it. But the reality is, everybody in the locker room needs people in the boardroom. And if they don't have the boardroom, and when I mean the boardroom, it's just more of like a visual, it's the marketing room, it's the accounting room, it's the finance room, right? It's the partnership room, it's the broadcasting room. Everyone needs that visibility in order to draw fans, create opportunities, eliminating lower cost for things that are increasingly getting more and more expensive. It's to create opportunities for others in the space. So it is. What I've seen now is that it takes a village to kick a soccer ball. The reality is that it takes a village. So where are you as an individual in your growth and your maturation? Where do you fit into that? Do you have a passion for soccer? Yeah, so that's a starting position, or for sports or whatever you want to do. But maybe your talent wasn't on the field, even though your passion might have been. We all kind of have to discover where our talents are. But your talent was in arts. Your talent was in creative. Your talent was in speaking. It's in numbers. It's in selling. All those things are needed to run a club. And in fact, the better clubs have the better people at the boardroom, so they can now bring the better players out of into the locker room and onto the field.
I believe that's the big secret of any professional, well-run club today. It's how strong the boardroom is.
100%.
Because there's a lot of, especially youth clubs, and I can say that I might create a little friction with our competitors and stuff. But there's a lot of soccer coaches trying to do the business.
True.
And there's a lot of business people trying to be on the field. And I think here, we were talking to the boys earlier, and we were able to separate that. And that's the first question I ask when I interview somebody is like, where do you want to be in soccer? Mm-hmm. If you want to be on the field, if you want to be a coach, forget everything else. Let's focus in coaching education, in developing, and in exposing yourself, anything that you can do on the grass. But if I don't know if coach that demand, because coaching the first couple of years is very grinding. It's tough. So if you don't want to do that and you want to start seeing some results, let's move here. And then we have departments here at Nona that it's different from other clubs, that we have departments of events, for example. I have the people run events or community relations. There is a person that's full-time related. I spoke to one of the executives here from one of our competitive clubs. I was coaching. I was doing coaching and education. I had 4 teams, and I was doing community relations, and I was doing this, and I was doing this, and I made $80,000 on that. And I haven't seen my wife in 3 months. I'm like, yeah. I'm not going to mention names. It's not to get ourselves in trouble.
But that's the reality. That's the norm.
And I'm like, such potential. Like you have somebody that if he's going to be your technical director, he's going to be the best at it. And just focus on that. And then let me bring somebody else to do the community relations. Let me bring somebody else to do the marketing and stuff. And it's just a simple fix that it takes a village to kick a soccer ball. I think I like that phrase you use. We're gonna put it in the.
It really is, yeah. And it takes the community engagement to be a part of it and understanding of it, because the economics, and like as you mentioned, I've been out of like running youth clubs for a while, and I know the economics have changed, but the economics don't really kind of add up as far as like how do you, if you run just like as you mentioned, if you're just a soccer person trying to run a business, you're going to do it, the business kind of transactional, right? Like, well, we have coming in from registration, needs to go out to pay bills. You're going to live and die by that. So what you need is like supplemental income. You need supplemental partnerships. You need events. You need other things that are going to help and minimize some of those costs, that you're not at the mercy of, 5 players leaving the club, a team leaving the club, and all of a sudden, how do we pay that coach? How do we do that? Because the economics are based on, for a lot of clubs that are still kind of, and a lot of them still operate on that. And I've always looked back at it. Listen, I was doing that 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. When I was running a club 20 years ago, that's how the economics were run, right? Player registration, pay fees, pay coach. Okay, but what if these players leave and they have the right to leave and they're going to leave and I can't fulfill that team? I have to close the doors. I can't pay that employee that's been committed to our club. No. So creating this environment around, like creating events, creating community engagement, creating partners in your city, to be able to creating sponsorships on things that you guys do really, really well, allows a club to grow healthy and to not be dependent on players and parents, because that is the cycle of youth soccer, that we become dependent on players thinking that they play for that coach. No, you play for the club. The coach is an employee of the club, and the club, based on evaluation, can move that coach around based on what they think is the best fit and the best talent level for that coach. But if the economics are based on player registration to pay coach, well, the coach has all the leverage. Yeah. Right? And that's not healthy. It's not a healthy environment. Or the parents have all the leverage. That's not a healthy environment, right? They are an important part of the village. They're an important part of the process. They need to be valued in that process, because they're the ones that are in that visible grind and creating a result and things that we all want and we see. But a club can be dependent on that. And what you're speaking of, it's still regular all over the world, all over the country in youth soccer, that most clubs are still operated on that transactional base economics. And then it creates the cycle. Well, if I can't coach that team anymore, then I'm going to take my team somewhere else. Oh, if I don't get to play for that coach, I'm going to go to a different. Okay, go. If that's what you choose, no problem. That's okay. That's a choice that you have. This is America. It's a beautiful country. You have the freedom to go. Go. Make sure you pay your fees, pay your dues, and you can go. But at this club, right, you don't get to make that decision. At this club, coach, you don't get to make the decision. We want to make the decision together after conversation, after a back and forth, look at the entire picture. And if we feel like it's the best thing from a club leadership standpoint, that's what we're going to go with. Do you support that? You don't? Okay, no problem. We wish you the best of luck. And no hard feelings. No hard feelings, right? Because everyone has their own prerogative. They have their own kind of pathway. But as a club community and a DNA and culture, you can't be dependent on parents and coaches having all that leverage. And right now in youth soccer all over the country, those are people that have the leverage, and you can't survive. You can't have a healthy club, in my opinion.
One thing I learned along the way with all of the meetings that we've been to and all the people that we've met along the way is that the field part, the soccer part, has a lot of emotion attached to it. And in business, sometimes you have to be cold. The gut feeling has to be there, and you have to stick to rules and regulations. So one of the things that I've learned, I think the biggest piece for me was, Fabio, where do you want to go? Do you want to be a coach? Be a coach for somebody else. Be a coach for any other club. But if you want to grow the club, step away from the field. Because we're going to have to make those decisions. And I used to say that, oh, my God, it's so hard to deal with soccer players. It's hard to deal with coaches.
Very difficult. Oh, yeah.
It's harder to deal with coaches than soccer players because it becomes that need of the selfish, engaging, I need that player, doesn't matter. Well, that player doesn't follow the rules, or the parents, or the player doesn't pay their dues, or whatever the case may be. Oh, I don't care. I need to win the game this weekend, and I need that player. Oh, that's not how it works here. But that's
hard. Yeah, no,
the emotional part of the game, and I think everybody in the 90s in Brazil, like all those club directors and the presidents of the club down there, they were very emotional. They go on the field and they do that. Yeah. And I've done my part of that. When I started, I was very emotional. It was my baby growing up, and now I think we remove ourselves, and people come to me today, and every time that happens, I'm super proud. It's like, how can you watch a game like this?
You've gone through it.
You're so calm, and you don't care about the results. Of course I care about the result. I want to win, but it's not what drives me.
Yeah.
There's nothing, Mauricio, I can do to teach my son how to lose besides a soccer game. If I take him home and I want to teach him a loss, to feel a loss, my lifestyle today doesn't allow my kids to lose.
But so the game is a teacher.
The game is the only controlled environment that I have for him to go through his own resilience, to go through his own things without having to suffer more, because that's how life is.
Yeah.
But out there, they're not going to be as nice as the game will be to them. At the end of the day, they shake hands and they play, and that's how.
Well, that goes back to, unfortunately, and it happens all over the world, like parents living vicariously through their kids, things that they didn't achieve on the field, but they created a lifestyle that now they can promote that opportunity, and parents are like, well, I want that for my son and daughter, and that's a noble kind of thought. But you have to be able to separate. Like, I always ask the question in most environments when there's confusions, what are your objectives, right? So what's your mission? What's your mission vision? What are your objective as a club? What is your objective as a teacher of the game, as a parent? What's your objective? Okay. Well, I don't know how to answer. What are your values? What do you value in life? What's important to you? What are the things that it's like, not that you don't make mistakes, but like you don't compromise on. Like, because if you make a mistake, you made the mistake because like you're human and you're gonna make mistakes. But what are the things that you don't compromise on? And those should lead to your objectives. So your values are your breadcrumbs and your steps towards achieving your objective, or at least pushing towards your objective. And a lot of people have a tough time answering that question because it's gonna go away from the human nature, right? Because the objective is for my son and daughter to play pro. Okay, so what if you fail at that? Because the whole world, there's only a really small percentage. What was learned through that process? Okay, let me challenge you. Is your objective to teach and to educate and to grow a good human being that's going to be kind, it's going to be polite, it's going to be servant in the community, that's going to provide a value to the community in whatever job that they do? If they're going to be an accountant, they can be a great accountant. They're going to bring light into that room. If they're going to be, they're going to sell food at the food truck, they can do that. If they want to own a restaurant, they can do that. What are the things that we're teaching our kids today to run their own family, to run their own environment, that are unattached to the outcome of playing professional soccer or getting that scholarship? That's and there's nothing wrong with those things. But when we bring those in the front and we make those idols in our life, rather than just kind of, you'll be great and let's work towards that and let's work really, really hard towards that, but let's not lose sight There's so many lessons along the way, and we're going to take all these lessons and we're going to come really mold a great human being. And if that's your objective going into it, that my job as a parent is to create first and foremost a really good, kind, giving, serving human being. Hardworking, patient, that's my objective. The game can teach that if you allow it to teach that. But if you remove that as a teaching opportunity, then you're putting the objective in front of your values. And you got to start with your values. And unfortunately, even some really, really good friends and people that we all have, they get confused because the need and the pressure to be successful. And you have to define what your success is. And once again, and kind of work backwards in order to achieve that. How do I do that? And it starts with objectives and values for me. And a lot of clubs have missed that point. And they've turned club soccer into a business. And they're quickly forgetting it's the business of youth soccer. Youth is kids. So every decision that you make in our organization, it's going to impact the life of a kid. A kid has a parent attached to it. A parent's emotionally attached to the kid. So it's a family kind of commitment. And a lot of clubs have just missed that. They've missed the ability to first and foremost to care for the human being the way that they would like to be cared for, because they become, to your point, these mega clubs, these mega teams, and to a certain extent, they've kind of outgrown their ability to self-control.
Wow. I love it. I think we can do, like I said, we definitely need a second part of this, Mal. Every time we have a conversation, I was in the last 25 years that we know each other, I don't think we ever got into a phone call that's less than 45 minutes. And it's good to share ideas and to share a common ground. I want to thank you once again for taking your time to in your stop here at the U.S. soccer camp today to stop here. It's late. You have to drive back to Jacksonville. I appreciate your time, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you guys have any questions or anything, like I said, I'm gonna put Mauricio's Aero business link on this comments here. But put your comments here, and I'll forward it to Mauricio. Maybe he can help us share. Edgar, thank you. It's been a long day for us today. We've been here, but I hope you enjoyed this. Great information. So overall, so thank you very much. Once again, thank you, Nona Media, Nemours, and BioHome for being part of this. And Mal, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
I'll see you next time.